Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video we are going to be talking about, is ADHD hereditary? But before we start, if you could smash me a big thumbs up down below and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'll forever be grateful. I'm trying to make my dream a reality. When people say like, is ADHD hereditary, there is no definitive answer. Like, there is no research out there that can say yes, that can say no. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. There isn't any, like I say, there's no official answer to that. And so I thought, why don't I do my own little bit of research and see what people say. I'm going to use my own little background, my own information, my family kind of tree, and I'm just going to kind of see if there's anybody in my family with ADHD that are like super close to me. So yeah, let's just get on. So obviously I have ADHD, and my family tree is pretty kind of simple. There's nobody else in my whole entire family that has a diagnosis of ADHD. So you could think like,
oh well, no, it can't be hereditary, like no one in your family has it, so how do you have it?
Well, even though there's no diagnosis of ADHD in my family, there are definitely people that have traits. Specifically, my dad. Okay, so my dad has some autistic and ADHD traits, but he doesn't have a diagnosis of either. So again, I can't say it come from him because he doesn't have a diagnosis, but there are traits within my dad. So my mum has bipolar but doesn't have ADHD diagnosis. But bipolar is super similar to ADHD. Like, the links between those are like, they're really close. So some of the traits of ADHD mirror some of the traits of bipolar. So sometimes it's really hard to kind of say, does Molly have bipolar or does she have ADHD? Because again, they're so similar, and growing up my mum actually thought I had bipolar because our similarities are like very close. There are definitely some mental health issues in my family that run like a long stream. Like, a lot of people say I'm like one of my uncles who is just a warrior. My godfather is a warrior. There's definitely people in my family who are born warriors, like anxiety, and that's definitely me. My younger sister is completely different to me, but she does have some traits that could mirror ADHD. But if you look at it logically, I'm my sister's older sister, so she has kind of learnt some of my behaviours, because younger siblings almost learn a lot of their traits, a lot of their behaviours from their elder siblings. And my sister had me as an older sister, and I've got ADHD, so it's very kind of obvious, that she's gonna have some ADHD traits because she's copied some of my behaviours. So like I say, there's no official diagnosis in my family of ADHD, but there is bipolar, anxiety, manic depression. So yeah, there's no diagnosis in my family of ADHD. I'm the first person. So it kind of makes you feel like, oh, it can't be hereditary then, because why do I have it? But there are definitely mental health diagnoses along my family line that definitely scream out as like, could be ADHD, could be autism. Who knows? The hardest thing for the researchers and the doctors and the scientists to kind of find out is what causes ADHD. If they could find that out, then they could possibly kind of figure out, is it hereditary or is it genetic? Because the thing is, they still can't pinpoint what causes ADHD. It could be your mum's diet when she's pregnant with you. Was your mum very ill when she was pregnant with you, like morning sickness? It could be a traumatic birth, a traumatic childhood, could be premature birth. Like, there's so many things that are speculated to cause or trigger ADHD in a child. There's so many things that doctors, scientists like have mentioned and speculate, but there's no official kind of idea of what causes it. And I think if they found the cause and the pinpoint of like what causes ADHD, it could potentially help maybe prevent it. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but if they found what causes it, they could potentially kind of like, if it's the diet of the mum, that then they could say maybe within pregnancy, don't do this, don't eat this sort of food. If it's down to a traumatic birth, then again, there's nothing anybody can do to help that. Because for me, when I was born, my mum was rushed into an emergency cesarean because my heartbeat like drastically dropped. So again, that was a traumatic birth on my side and my mum's side. So, you know, that could have triggered maybe a bit of an anxiety attack on the mum and stress on me as a baby. So, you know, there's so many things that are speculated to cause ADHD, but until they find out, you know, what actually causes ADHD, I don't actually know if they will ever kind of figure out what, is it hereditary or is it genetic or is it caused by traumatic birth. They just don't know at this precise moment in time, so it's hard for the doctors, the researchers, the scientists to kind of pinpoint, like, can we prevent this, or is it generally something that the person is born with. So like I say, there are researches, there are papers that have been done that suggest that it is genetic, and I'm going to give you some reasons why, why these scientists, why these researchers believe that it could be genetic, and then I'm going to tell you after that why it potentially isn't hereditary or genetic. So these are some facts from the paper that suggest that it is genetic. I will link down the research and the paper and the source where I get this information from in my description. So there is like some available research that actually says ADHD is genetic, it is hereditary, because there has been a research kind of investigation in the USA that states that 1/3 of fathers with ADHD have children that have ADHD, and they think that the link and the genetic kind of cells come from the father. So yeah, I mean, that's a start, and hopefully they can expand on that and get some more evidence so that we kind of have a little bit more of an understanding of like, where does ADHD come from? Like, have some more answers. So some more ADHD researchers have found that they do believe that it is genetic because they have tested a set of twins. So if one twin has ADHD, it's more likely that the other twin also has ADHD. So again, the same kind of research says that they are still looking to find specifically what cell and what gene carries the ADHD kind of traits, because there just isn't a definitive answer yet. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist and I don't claim to be, but this is super interesting. I've done my own little bit of research and I find that it is really, really interesting. So this is another kind of research paper that suggests that it is definitely not hereditary. So in the USA and in like throughout Europe, there has been more tests done that suggest that it isn't hereditary or genetic, because they have worked on families that both parents have ADHD, or one has autism, one has ADHD, or one has ADHD, for example, and none of their offspring, none of their children have any traits of ADHD or autism or any kind of neurological disorder. They say that like it's 25% chance. I mean, okay, I mean, I'm not very good at like maths and science and all of that lot, but it's super interesting because obviously, like I say, there is no diagnosis in my family of ADHD, and I find it really interesting to why I've got it severely and why I struggle so badly with it. There's just no definitive answer, you know, it's really like a conflict answer. There isn't any answer that says it, and I feel like the more you try to read up on it, the more you're getting mixed responses. So if you are interested in me doing some more research, speaking to doctors or finding out some more information, please let me know if you are interested in this, and you know, I'll search out and I'll reach out to people to get some more information. So I can give you some like definitive answers to some research, and I'm gonna kind of just throw some of these in there because they are interesting. So I'm gonna pop some pictures like here and here, wherever, to kind of show the difference between an ADHD brain and a non-ADHD brain, because apparently as a child the ADHD brain definitely matures a lot slower than a non-ADHD brain. I don't really know the science behind it, but it definitely, the brain scans and the brain images do show the difference between kind of like the activity and the maturity rate in either kind of brain. So this part is super sciencey, and again, I don't really know how to say many of these things. So some of these brain scans actually have shown the difference in brain structure between an ADHD child and a non-ADHD child by the way that our brain is structured. Several parts of our brain, like regions such as the frontal cortex, again, I'm going to put the word here, the basal ganglia, oh my god, again I'm going to type it here, and the cerebellum, cerebellum tend to be a lot smaller, like 5% smaller than a child without ADHD. But it's not in a definitive way, you can't use it to diagnose ADHD yet. But researchers and scientists are really hopeful that one day, you know, brain scanning and brain imaging can be used as a way to diagnose ADHD. And, you know, you never know, that it could become maybe like more of a routine check in younger children, so that we can, you know, screen it a lot earlier and diagnose it a lot earlier, so that these children get the help they require a lot earlier on. So again, this is definitive research, like this is official research, and it does show that there are chemical imbalancements within the ADHD brain. So, you know, the chemical kind of percentage of the brain, or, you know, again, I'm not a scientist, but the chemical difference between a non and an ADHDer are definitely different. So some of the first researchers found medication that they believed could help kind of prevent and help kind of correct the differences in like cerebellum and all of our brain structure. They thought they found kind of the answer, and they believed that it could be corrected, could be fixed. They later found that that wasn't the case. So here is a little bit, again, of a little bit of a sciencey, geeky kind of thing, and if you're interested in this, you might like this. So scientists have definitively found this research to be true, and it is an official kind of part of an ADHD diagnosis that they can look for if they decide to do like imaging, brain imaging, and it affects 4 main kind of regions of our brain. So the first one is the frontal cortex. So the frontal cortex is mainly used for like organization, attention span, you know, basically maintenance and maintaining like focus, organization. I don't really know what else because I suck at all of this. So again, it has been noted, and it is official, that our lack of like dopamine can affect our frontal cortex. It can be the main cause of our lack of attention, our lack of kind of being able to maintain routines, maintain focus, maintain organization, and kind of time management, that sort of stuff. So the next region that it does affect is our limbic system. So this part of the brain is like embedded pretty deep. So this part of our brain locates our emotions. It helps us regulate our emotions. It helps us understand and interact like appropriately to emotions. So the lack of our dopamine, it can affect our restlessness. So in the limbic system, our kind of lack of dopamine can affect the way that we
react.
With these like deficiencies in dopamine, it does affect our way of regulating. So for the third part of our brain that is kind of affected by our deficiency in dopamine, you know, it is our basilar ganglia. I mean, again, I'm going to write it on the screen because I just can't read anyway. So the basilar ganglia, I'm just going to call it that because I don't really know what it's called, help us regulate like communication. So it helps us basically help us with communication. It helps transmit messages from one side of the brain to the other, and our deficiency of dopamine can slow that down, and sometimes we're kind of just left like, how do we react here? So it can leave us kind of being restless again and impulsive, and our inattentive kind of traits, behaviours can become like worsen because our deficiency in our basal ganglia. I don't know what I'm saying here. I don't know what the hell that word says, but yeah. Fourth region that is affected by a deficiency in dopamine is the reticular activating system. So again, this kind of part of our brain is a pathway for messages to be sent, and because the rest of them aren't working, this one is definitely going to be affected. So this one will kind of affect our hyperactivity. And remember, hyperactivity doesn't just mean bouncing off walls. It could be a hyper-focusing, it could be hypersensitive, hypersexual. You know, there's many different versions of being hyperactive. So you don't just have to be jumping off the walls, but it does affect the hyperactive side of our brain. So yeah, it's just how our messages kind of go in and how it leaves. Does it get to the right destination in time? you know, with that type of deficiency, it can lead to just, yeah, everything going a bit crazy, and none of our brains kind of getting the messages on time because a neurotransmitter thing is just out the window. It kind of makes me understand a little bit more why some of our regulation with emotion are, you know, how we interact, how we express emotion, how we communicate. All those things we find challenging because our structure and our functional, you know, how our brain functions is sometimes just a little bit behind. Like 5% of our kind of brain regions are smaller. So it kind of makes you realise and appreciate that your brain does work really hard to try and like make you normal for society. You know, it's definitely challenging, but I know our brains are pretty good, trust me. The thing to remember is, you know, we may lack some areas of like concentration, regulating emotion, just, you know, we may lack in some areas, but we definitely make it up in our personality. Like, we are generous, we are caring, we are loving. Not a lot of people have those qualities, so I think having ADHD is definitely a benefit. So the way to think about it is, if you had a circuit and one kind of part of that circuit broke, the circuit isn't gonna work anymore. And that's how our mind is working with ADHD and our deficiency in dopamine and our transmitters. Because if one part of our brain isn't functioning correctly, it could definitely affect the way that our brains are reaching and transmitting and, you know, expressing emotion and our impulse. You know, basically, let's just say one part of our brain may not be on point sometimes, and then that just means that the other brains our other regions of our brains are either overworking, which makes us exhausted and having a burnout, or they're just not all working together, and that's pretty much it. There's no I in team. You need to work together, and our brain struggles a bit because we have a deficiency in dopamine. So as much as I respect scientists and I'm really interested in science, I still believe that we could be doing more to start to learn about ADHD. You know, if I could cut open my brain and tell you what's different between mine and yours, I would, because I want others to know that you're not different. It generally is the way that we are born, and we are meant to be who we are. And like I say, we have so many things that other people don't have. You know, our ability to be out of this world, basically, our ability to be creative, to be fun, to be passionate, to be determined, to encourage others with our, you know, zest for life. All these things that we have, not a lot of people without ADHD have, because they're so caught up in their own mind, whereas we are so open to our crazy world. We see things through a different lens, we see things through a different set of eyes, and the thing is, we're so lucky that we have the opportunity to see the world as it is, the fun adventure that we are living. You know, we have so many amazing things to thank for our ADHD brain. It may lack in some areas, but trust me, our personality and our big hearts make up for some things that we lack. And I just want you to know, you are worth it, you are one of a kind, and trust me, you being you is enough. Never change for anyone. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've learned a little bit more about our ADHD brains. Again, I'm not a scientist, but I am going to link where I got the research from and kind of let you guys make your own opinion. And I think deep down, more research needs to be done so we can help kind of diagnose younger and get help for younger people sooner. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm so thankful for your support. So let's get on. Why am I saying that? I'll see you next time. Bye.